AOC is not currently, she's not, she is not the same as Nancy Pelosi right in this moment is, but there's absolutely a case to be made that AOC is on a very similar trajectory to Nancy Pelosi. I mean, Nancy Pelosi came into Congress supporting things like universal healthcare. You can find speeches of Nancy Pelosi's arguing in favor of universal healthcare, single payer healthcare, like 30 years ago. You can find speeches of her saying, we got to bring up legislation. We got to get a vote on this. Like she was, having that same progressive rhetoric 30 years ago when it wasn't as politically convenient. So in the same way, you could say that Nancy Pelosi was in some ways just as progressive, relatively speaking, back then as AOC is today, technically, nominally progressive. But the reality is that the longer you spend in Congress, like you don't change the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party changes you. All right. That's how it works. You don't change systems. Systems change you. All right. So you got to get real with these things and recognize that people only move to the right once they make it into Congress. And we have to really, really be super careful about, I don't know that there's any individual that we're going to be able to put in Congress that isn't going to be susceptible to these pressures. Now, I see somebody like Kshama Sawant, who was able to get elected and still maintained her, her socialist, left-wing ideology and stances, and she has actually effectively fought for legislation. But even somebody like, I saw Feminist News Network, shout out to Feminist News Network, check out her channel, subscribe to her channel if you haven't already, support independent Black media. So shout out to Feminist News Network. And I see that she said, get ready, Nina's coming. And I really did. I wanted to, and X says, Nina. And I think that, I've shown love for Nina Turner on the show. And I've got nothing but love for Nina Turner as a person. And I know that she has all the right thoughts and believes all these things, but I'll do a segment on Nina Turner soon, because I'm actually trying to reach out to Unapologetic on YouTube. His name is Unapologetic on YT is his name on Twitter. He goes by Unapologetic, another Black leftist who has covered covered Nina Turner a little bit more in depth. But he highlighted some really great points about Nina Turner's campaign already. The people that she's already hired onto the campaign have been, these Democratic operatives, in some cases, really high profile Democratic operatives. And unfortunately, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Nina Turner. I just think that once you make it into these institutions, that they slowly chip away at your progressivism and your leftism, and eventually you end up succumbing to the pressures of those institutions. And so I don't hear Nina Turner saying anything substantively different than what AOC and folks like her were saying before they got elected. She's not talking about a strategy that she went, for instance, in the Force the Vote movement, she came out on the Hill on Rising and said that she would have deferred to her colleagues in Congress on that issue, which means that she would have done the same tactic that AOC and the squad and the Justice Democrats did in that situation. And that was not the right tactic in that situation.
And so does that include using tools like, the speaker vote, because the margin is so narrow in the House, progressives and, strong progressives like the squad, like incoming members Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Mondaire Jones, and others combined together have a lot of potential leverage and power here to extract some potential concessions. Do you think that using tools like being willing to withhold your vote for Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, should be on the table?
All tools should be on the table, Crystal. And I definitely lean to the wisdom of my colleagues.
As much as I really, really want Nina Turner to prove me wrong, and I really hope she does, I am worried. I am seriously nervous about Nina Turner. Corey Saylor says, I'm a little pessimistic about Nina, not going to lie. Honestly, Corey, I am as well. Sadly, not because of who she is. She is great. She is a strong, figure on the left. But I just think that once you take somebody and you put them into Congress, the work begins to, they begin to be reshaped and they begin to change. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have the understanding of power on the left. We don't have a good enough understanding of power and strategy to actually impact this. We need to have people that realize that, because this is the thing. We went, and I heard Virgil Texas from Chapel Trap House. He's from Bad Faith Podcast. He was on Bad Faith Podcast talking about this, essentially talking about how this is something that we've seen from like the socialist organizations and left-wing organizations. We went, we did the work, we organized. It was really great work that we did. Power to all the people. I was one of those people, Justice Democrats and all that, going out there, knocking on doors, making phone calls. We did all this. We got these people elected. And then once they got elected, we did not send them in there with any kind of strategy. We never talked, what is our actual strategy going to be? Because it's, if the plan that these people think they have is that we're going to get enough, progressives elected that we're going to control we'll essentially have at least the majority of the Democrats. So in order to get a majority of the Democrats, that you're talking about, you have to have, if you have a majority of the Democrats, when they have a majority in the House, which means having more than 100, you have to have at least, in order to do that, you have to have 108. You have to have 108 progressives. You would have to have 108 real, true progressives in Congress. We are moving at a clip of about 2 or 3 every 2 years. If we keep moving at this rate, you're literally talking about something that might take close to 100 years, and then you have to hope, that those people, in literally 70 years from now, are one still alive at age 100 and still just as progressive as they are today. That can't be the strategy. It cannot be get enough progressives elected to control a majority of the majority party. Not going to happen. So the only strategy that you can then be talking about is have a large enough block of progressives that is bigger than the margin between Democrats and Republicans in the House, because then you have the ability to say, if we withhold our vote, you cannot pass any legislation without our vote. So that's when that's where you have leverage, and they do not have that understanding. They refuse to exercise leverage or power in any substantive way. And sadly, I don't hear anything out of Nina Turner that suggests that she's going to do anything differently. So I want her to do better, and I will be rooting for her to do better. In the back of my mind, I can't, it's very difficult for me to throw support behind her in the same way that I did for an AOC who was every bit as progressive and radical as Nina Turner was, and calling out the establishment and saying all the right things before she got elected. I'm just afraid of what happens after they get elected, sadly.